allegations of passports for sale at Canada's High Commission in Hong Kong, staff accepting gifts and money, socializing with known criminals, all uncovered by Immigration Control Officer Brian McAdam. Now, you might have thought that all of this would have set off alarm bells here on Parliament Hill. The very thought that employees of the Government of Canada were involved in massive corruption that could have allowed dangerous criminals into the country. But surprisingly, nobody here, not one ministry, not one agency, seemed to be very interested in getting to the bottom of this, except for one Liberal MP who felt that this was perhaps the most serious scandal that he had encountered in his political life. David Kilgore met with Brian McAdam, and he was convinced that something was seriously wrong in Hong Kong. In this 1995 letter to Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, he tried to warn him about the highly irresponsible and/or illegal activities and asked for a full public inquiry.
I thought that what McAdam was saying, as a 30-year veteran of Immigration Canada who had done, I think, 2 postings in Hong Kong, that what he was saying was serious enough that I thought I should refer it first to the Immigration Minister of the day and then to the Prime Minister.
The inquiry didn't happen.
No, it certainly didn't.
Prime Minister Jean Chrétien never even acknowledged Kilgore's letter. And it was into that climate of see no evil, hear no evil that our second whistleblower stumbled. RCMP Corporal Robert Reid was assigned to review the Hong Kong file, and what he discovered would change his life forever.
It's kind of like walking through, walking through a forest and all of a sudden you find yourself in quicksand.
Corporal Reid grew up in Regina, Saskatchewan, the home of the RCMP. Like any dedicated cop, Reid thought that his job was to dig into the allegations and get to the truth. One of the first things he came across was the top-secret Balsa report, which laid bare the security breaches. Armed with that, he went to his boss.
He said, "Well, this is water under the bridge. Why go over this again?" And I was very shocked by that. I said, "This is not water under the bridge. This is evidence of a major fault."
The more he dug into the affair, the more resistance he felt. The Departments of Foreign Affairs and Immigration blocked their staff from speaking with Reid, something that Reid's RCMP boss agreed to.
I arrived at the opinion that in fact, the progress I was making was not pleasing to my superiors.
He was not the first investigator who felt resistance. In 1993, Staff Sergeant Jim Puckniak wanted to go to Hong Kong and conduct a proper investigation. But the RCMP liaison officer at the mission, Inspector Gary Lajamodiere, wrote a memo back to Ottawa advising against it, saying it would upset the High Commissioner, John Higginbotham. Lajamodiere said that if your investigators came to Hong Kong, it would be viewed as a witch hunt, and he said, "I can guarantee you, Canadian High Commissioner, will be screaming at the highest political levels." What did you make of that?
My instinct then, and still is that if there was nothing to hide, you would welcome a police investigation. So obviously there was something that was going on.
Did you feel at any point that there was political interference at the highest levels on this investigation?
It just seemed throughout this investigation and anything to do with the Hong Kong file that there was always something blocking it, some reason why we couldn't go.
Corporal Reid felt the same frustration. Did you feel that maybe you were getting a little bit too close to a very uncomfortable truth for the Canadian government?
Well, I felt that I had discovered a cover-up. At that time, I believed that it was Department of Immigration and the Department of Foreign Affairs who were involved in this.
Let's just be clear about this. You're saying that there was a cover-up conducted by the federal government?
Yes.
By a couple of departments in the federal government?
Yes, certainly.
You're also saying that there was obstruction of justice by the RCMP?
Yes.
Those are pretty serious charges.
Yes, they are, yeah.
In 1999, Corporal Reid did the unthinkable for a police officer. He broke his oath of secrecy and went public about the scandal in Hong Kong. The RCMP reacted swiftly. The force charged the 24-year veteran with professional misconduct, found him guilty, and fired him. And that might have been the end of it. But Reed appealed his dismissal to the RCMP's Civilian Review Committee. And out of the thousands of pages of documents and testimony from his disciplinary hearing came this decision in September 2003. Vindication for Reed and McAdam and scathing criticism of the RCMP. The Review Committee found that the RCMP was walking on eggshells whenever it conducted an investigation into activities at the Canadian mission abroad. And this, what is at issue, was a deliberate choice made by the RCMP not to pursue an investigation into possible criminal wrongdoing, even though numerous examples had been drawn to its attention. It warned that the RCMP must not allow itself to be co-opted by government agencies. Retired RCMP Superintendent Gary Clement believes that the force failed in its duty to protect the citizens of Canada.
We dropped the ball. I mean, I don't think we should try and defend it. The bottom line is we dropped the ball in this investigation.
The Review Committee found that while Corporal Reed made mistakes, he was justified in raising a matter of legitimate public concern and recommended that the RCMP reinstate him. But the question of the cover-up remains active. Liberal MP David Kilgore.
Nobody's above the law. Ultimately, it was the RCMP's responsibility to say to anybody who was telling them, don't rock any boats or don't do this or don't do that, to say, sorry, our mandate is to go and see if there's been a criminal offense committed.
Do you think that we will ever get to the bottom of who was truly behind the cover-up in this case?
I don't know. I would think if we had a team of investigators assigned to go and find out, I don't think it'd be very hard to find out what happened, even now, 10 years later.
Former Hong Kong Police Inspector Sandy Boucher.
It should have been dealt with, and it wasn't. The way it's ended up, this story has ended up, is staggering.
Do you believe there was a Canadian cover-up on this?
Sure. If you look at, what's happened with the overall picture of the Hong Kong mission, I've no doubt there's a cover-up.
But by who and why? Well, there are a number of places to look. Exposing the corruption at the High Commission would have embarrassed the government. It could have ruined the careers of some bureaucrats, and it would have revealed a woefully inadequate RCMP investigation. As it turned out, no one was embarrassed and no one lost their jobs, except for the two whistleblowers, Robert Reed and Brian McAdam, who became the target of a vicious personal campaign.
I don't think in 30 years of being involved in policing I've ever seen a character assassination that took place by an organization. First, from somebody that really did his job. He was very well-meaning. He represented, I think, what the public expects of a civil servant.
McAdam eventually suffered a nervous breakdown and had to take early retirement.
Do you ever regret having spoken out? Life would have been a whole lot easier if you didn't,
No, personally, I do not regret it. My ethics are such that I had to do what I did. But it's not easy being a whistleblower.
The Mounties' creed, they always get their man. Well, in this case, the only man they got was one of their own, a lowly corporal. The findings of the Review Committee are not binding, and the RCMP has refused to reinstate Robert Reed. He now spends his days volunteering at an Ottawa community center, his policing career in ruins. And remember the Ice Queen? Well, just months after she emigrated to Canada, she disappeared. Today, 14 years later, still on Interpol's list of most wanted fugitives. Last known address, Canada.